Welcome back to the channel. There's not a lot of great stuff going on in DC Comics right now. We got Chip Zdarsky's Batman. We've got Mark Waid, Batman, Superman, World's Finest. And then we've also got Jeremy Adams' Flash series that is very, very good. He's the one writer they've discovered in the last 2 years that's absolutely worth a damn. And DC Comics are absolutely screwing this guy over. You will not believe what they're doing to him. And you will not believe, well, maybe you will believe, who is actually gunning for his job. And here to talk to me about that is editor at Merc Publishing, also former editor at Boom Studios, Aaron Sparrow. How you doing, Aaron?
I'm doing really well, Wes. I'm super tired. I've not been getting a lot of sleep lately. There's a lot going on creatively, so yeah, it's just my brain's been racing and haven't been getting enough sleep. So hopefully I'll be coherent with you on this video.
Well, hopefully you guys aren't screwing over your creators like DC are doing right now. Wally West was in a terrible state when Jeremy Adams got the book. Heroes in Crisis happened, and basically I've heard it described as the last Jedi for DC Comics, something so reviled, so hated, nobody ever wants to revisit the character anymore. They gave him to Jeremy Adams, and basically he's been able to take chicken shit and turn it into chicken salad, and he's getting no love for this whatsoever.
No, it's interesting, and it feels like there's some jealousy issues going on at DC. You got Jeremy Adams, who's coming in and is actually a writer that people like, and then it looks like a writer that people are not too fond of is gunning for his job. Feels like a real Elite versus CM Punk situation.
His contract is almost up at DC Comics. He does have an end date or an end time when he's going to have to leave the Flash because he's always signed on for so many stories. He's been trying, what I'm told from my sources near DC Comics, he's been trying to get a hold of DC Comics editorial. They will not reply to emails. They will not even return phone calls anymore to even talk to him about the stories that he's doing or if they have any future plans with it.
This is one of the things that I absolutely hate about this industry. There's so many editors that just will ghost you if they don't have answers for you or they're afraid of giving you the answer. They will just ignore you and just not respond at all. It's really unprofessional. I think that it's a terrible way to do business. But unfortunately, that's the way that it is. They will just disappear. You're like, hey, I haven't been paid, and you won't hear anything back from them. Answer your people. Even if you don't have an answer, like, if I've got somebody who's like, hey, where's this invoice? And that happened a lot at Boom because we would actually have meetings where we would sit down and be like, okay, who's going to complain? We can only pay like 10 people right now. Who's going to complain? And we'd have to go like play that game. Who hasn't been paid? Who's gone the longest? Who's going to complain? Who will write it out so we can kind of push them to the side. You have those kinds of meetings when money's tight and planning is not good. And unfortunately, with a lot of these companies, planning is not good. So, but as an editor, I always felt responsible to like reach out and say like, hey, we're having some problems. We're going to get you paid as soon as possible. Even to the people who weren't asking yet. Just let them know that there could be potential problems so that they can make adjustments. They're not, they're depending on that check. So if it's not going to come, they need to know so they can, maneuver things around. Likewise, if you got a guy who's, hey, I'm turning in projects. What am I doing here? Is there anything else for me in the future? Just get back to him and at least tell him that you don't know yet, so he knows that you're not ghosting him, not ignoring him.
I've talked to people behind the scenes that are close to DC Comics, and they've talked about the new batch of writers, the Megan Fitzmartins, the Tim Sheridans, the Stephanie Phillips. Across the board, you'll hear that they don't really do any research. They don't really know the characters, and that comes shining through when you read the stories. Nothing makes sense. The characters never feel correct. Jeremy Adams is the one writer that works with DC editorial that actually goes out there and does research. He goes out there, studies all the characters, reads all the stories. Should it be outside the norm at this point in time, Aaron Sparrow, that a new writer go in there and even do research?
He's my kind of writer. I like the fact that he's going in, he's studying the continuity, and he's trying to actually write the characters consistent. One thing I can't stand is people who are too lazy to do the research and want to come in and like, well, I'm going to write my stories with these characters. No, you're going to write stories about these characters that come from these characters and these experience, or you're off the book. That's that's pretty much how I run things. So for a guy like Jeremy Adams, he's like a dream come true. A guy who actually cares enough to do the research. So why would you screw that guy over? It's absolutely ridiculous.
You know what the crazy thing is? He absolutely saved their bacon on this. Yes, he's done a wonderful job on The Flash, but he's also been co-writing Flashpoint Beyond with Jeff Johns and Tim Sheridan. Apparently, he and Tim Sheridan are friends. I think most people, including myself, thought this was a Jeff Johns project, like he outlined the story, and then Tim Sheridan and Jeremy Adams came in and fished it off. That is not the case. It's his idea behind Flashpoint Beyond. He came up with the entire concept, outlined everything. They brought in Jeff Johns afterwards, and he did add some things to it. Obviously, it ties into JSA and stuff like that. But DC Comics have nothing hot right now. They can sell some Batman comics, and that's about it. He actually brought them a project, tied it into something in DC Comics path, and they actually had a hit comic book. This dude saved his editor's ass, gave him a hit comic book, and he won't even fucking call him back anymore.
It's really, you know, who knows what's going on inside DC at this point. There's so much turmoil, and it seems like there's just absolutely no leadership. You know, it's not surprising, it's unfortunate, but you know, it's not shocking that this is going on.
What also was not shocking is the person gunning for his job. DC Comics have like 2 or 3 exclusive writers at this point. Apparently, Tom Taylor, who got furious when his Superman comic book got canceled and he didn't know about it, is demanding that he gets put on The Flash. No one is asking for a Tom Taylor Flash comic book. I think most Flash fans that have been reading the series certainly want Jeremy Adams to continue, but Tom Taylor is gunning for this dude's job and trying to take over this series now.
Do they want sales on Flash to be worse? I mean, I don't understand. Like, what are you gunning with? You know, you're coming in with like, hey, I just failed on this comic book. Can I go ahead and you know, just fail on this next one? I don't understand the industry at all. It's you know, you got somebody who has proven to have a hostile relationship with fans, or at least, you know, fans have a hostile relationship towards him because of the non-stories that he's been writing, and you know, the things that he says in the media, and you know, just
the punch in the face doesn't help, Aaron.
No, it doesn't. You know, well, wearing a Newsies cap doesn't help either. Who do you think his favorite Newsie is? Is it Crutchy? It's Crutchy, isn't it? It's Crutchy. You know, it's one of those things where it's like, okay, so you're gonna take it away from a guy, you're gonna ignore a guy who saved your ass, who is turning in good stories, one of the only guys at DC who's turning in stuff that's actually readable, and you're gonna hand it to somebody that fans don't like, and you're gonna tank what sales you have on the Flash, you know, and they're not great on the Flash. You know, people do not trust DC with the Flash anymore. After all the things that they let Tom King do to Wally, nobody wants to go back to that book, and they should, because Jeremy Adams is really good. But you know, you hand it to Tom Taylor, and you're going to get even less sales than Jeremy Adams is getting, because people, as much as people don't trust the Flash from DC anymore, they don't trust Tom Taylor on anything.
No, Tom Taylor cannot write in continuity, like ongoing series. He failed every single time over at Marvel. At DC Comics, he's been given multiple opportunities. He's not failed one time, and that was with Nightwing. If you're reading Nightwing, that's a perfectly okay, very average comic book that is extremely slow-paced and easy to give up. That's the only thing that he's done that isn't revolting at this point. That's the high water mark, not revolting.
Yeah, easy to give up is the high water mark. That's really, wow. Yeah. I don't know what to say about DC anymore. It just feels like the inmates are running the asylum. It feels like they're just handing a book to anybody, you know, whether they know the characters or not. You know, that's the other thing about Jeremy Adams, is at least he puts in the research. At least he's in there, like, writing characters in continuity, writing characters in character, you know, because he's actually studied, you know, who the characters are and who the characters have been. And this is one of DC's big problems, is they bring people in who don't care and just kind of write their own fanfic with the characters, violating all of this continuity that fans know backwards and forwards. And that's why you get fans bailing out.
Well, and that's the other big problem. One of the things that he seems to understand that very few people at DC Comics these days kind of get is what DC fans actually want in their comic book. If you're a Wally West fan and you haven't been reading Jeremy Adams' Flash series, I say go back to the beginning, catch up, and you're going to find out there's been a Wally West book on the market for 2 years that you're going to absolutely love. It's everything you ever wanted in a Wally West book. It's not lame-ass fanfic. It's literally what Wally West fans have always been dreaming for, because not only does he get the character, but he gets the fans, and nobody else at DC Comics gets that. You know,
if DC is going to ghost Jeremy Adams, I think that he has a bold future ahead of him. I think that he can go to an independent company. He could certainly come pitch to me at Merck. Would love to hear what he's got in mind. I think the world is his oyster. Let's face it. You know, we saw people in the industry actually openly threatening to blackball and blacklist people the other day. What are you blacklisting them from? Not getting paid? Not getting paid on time? You know, like writing a book that has to cross over with something that some inferior writer is gonna have to,
You're
work
not allowed
together.
to be on my sinking ship.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, oh no, what am I going to do? There's plenty of independent companies out there making money. Crowdfunding is still making money. There's a lot more competition in the crowdfunding space, but you know what? There's still a great audience for it. There's still people that love comic books and want to read about characters, and they're tired of seeing their favorite characters at the big two get massacred. So they're finally like reaching out, trying to find new universes, new books to get hooked into that are outside of the Marvel and DC system. And you know what? Jeremy Adams probably have great success, outside and in that arena. So, I think that if DC screws him, it'll probably ultimately end up being to his benefit because he's a good creator and, he can knock it out of the park somewhere else.
Yeah, I think he's going to have a good reputation coming out of this. People are going to want to read his comic books. But this does not surprise me about Tom Taylor kind of going behind the scenes and trying to dictate what happens, being entitled to a new Flash comic book. I know you've dealt with stuff like this, maybe not exactly like this. I know you dealt with Mark Waid in the past when he was trying to demand changes when you were at Boom.
Yeah, there was so it was interesting. I was working on The Incredibles with Mark, and I got a lot of obviously there's a lot of stories about Mark out there and his behavior, but I got a lot of good stories about Mark too. I think that I think Mark is like anybody else. He's he's got his demons, but he's also got his really good points. So, but one thing that happened when I was at Boom was. He was on The Incredibles, and then he was kind of like half on The Incredibles, and we brought in Landry to kind of do Landry Walker to kind of do the heavy lifting for him, and then Mark decided he wasn't going to do The Incredibles anymore, and he said, "Well, I want you to hire Carl Kiesel." And I said, "Well, what about Landry? Like Landry's been working on the book with you." And he was like, "I'll email Landry and tell him we'll find something else for him, and that we're going to put Carl in the book." And I'm like, "Okay." So start taking pitches from Carl. The way the system works is. They turn in a pitch. You have to turn it over to Disney and Pixar. They have to review it. They'll approve certain things. They'll either say no completely to the story, or they'll approve certain elements of it, send it back to you. Then you got to send them character designs for any new characters that are being introduced for them to approve. It's a whole process. So as I remember, Carl, he gave a ton of pitches, and they only really were okay with one. So we were like, okay, well, we'll massage the others. We'll start working on this one as the next arc. And so we started doing that. And then when he turned in the actual script, there was a bunch of new characters that weren't in the pitch. So I went back to him and I said, "Hey, Carl, just so you know, I've got to have character designs done for these. I've got to submit them back to Pixar. I can't have you start yet because what you've turned in is essentially not exactly what they approved." So, and I guess Carl found the whole thing frustrating. He got really upset and he sent an email to Mark. And I remember it was read to me. It said, "I have no doubt that I can produce some great kids comics, but I can't do it with Aaron Sparrow." And I was kind of like chuckled and was like, "That's a good book jacket quote for something original that I do someday." But
I know exactly how that feels. I've always been like, I would be an enormous success on YouTube, but I can't do it with Aaron Sparrow.
Yeah, you keep having me back. Why are you such a glutton for punishment? So it turned into a big thing. Mark was really mad. I think he wanted me fired, but they looked at the pitches that we had from Carl, and then they kind of looked at like what Disney's responses were to it, and determined that maybe he wasn't right for the book. He wasn't going to gel well with Disney's system. So I got to go back to Landry anyway, and then Landry wrote some great Incredibles comics. We planned out several arcs, and to get us back on track, Landry did this amazing thing where he was writing one arc, the first issue of one arc, and then the first issue of the next arc. So there's like 3 issues that he hasn't written yet. But he had to juggle that back and forth, 2 different arcs, writing the first part, second part, and have it all tie together seamlessly. And he did a really killer job. We had a good outline, and he really followed it and nailed it. So it was ultimately the right decision. But yeah, so that's the only real and then at Boom, of course, I always had the Boom Studios side of things coming in and trying to force creators on me and force them onto Disney. Like it was kind of like treated as the dumping ground. Like, well, we don't have anything on the Boom Studios side for this guy, but we really want to give him something to kind of keep him on the hook. So just have him write Cars. And the writer, and I'd be like, okay, I guess you're going to pitch for Cars. And the writer would be like, I don't know anything about Cars. And I'd be like, I guess you better go watch the movie. Yeah, it was like it was one of those things, and it perfect. The funny thing is that never actually worked. It never got across the plate anytime they ever tried to force somebody on me. I've got a pretty good idea as an editor of who's right for what project and who's got the vision, and sometimes you just some people aren't good fits. I'm not a good fit for everything as a writer, and other people aren't either. So just like I feel like Tom Taylor's a bad fit for the Flash.
Well, what certainly is true is Jeremy Adams is a great fit for the Flash. He's done so many great things. He's not going to be rewarded. He's absolutely getting screwed over. Aaron, I do want to say thank you very much and happy holidays. We might see you here on the channel before Christmas happens, but if we don't, Merry Christmas, brother.
Yeah, Merry Christmas to you. Merry Christmas to all the viewers. But in the meantime, if you guys want to freeze frame and see what toys are in my Christmas tree, you guys are certainly welcome to do that.
I know you guys are going to be surprised by this, but when they announced that Tom Taylor was getting a DC exclusive contract, I predicted that this wasn't going to go well. I didn't think he was going to go out there and try and screw people out of their jobs and help DC kind of screw over a good up-and-coming creator, but I predicted disaster waiting for DC Comics when they made this decision. It was a stupid decision then, and it looks like a worse decision now. If you don't see this video here, there's also a link in the video description.